Have you noticed how the things that once seemed so important no longer carry the same weight? Have you ever wondered why certain worries that kept you up at night years ago now feel strangely distant? And what if I told you that reaching your 60s and beyond gives you the freedom to finally let go of pressures that never truly defined your worth? As we move into our 60s and beyond, something begins to shift. The concerns that once dominated our thoughts, how we looked, what others thought of us, whether we were doing enough, all start to loosen their grip. One day, you may wake up and realize that the endless pressure to prove yourself, to please everyone around you, or to keep up with impossible standards simply doesn't make sense anymore. In this video, we'll be exploring 12 things that just don't matter after the age of 61. These aren't passing annoyances or surface-level distractions. They're deeply ingrained habits and long-held worries that shaped much of our younger years. But now, at this stage of life, they deserve to be re-examined. Letting go of them doesn't mean giving up. It means stepping into a new chapter where your life feels lighter, clearer, and truly your own. Think of it this way. If you've ever felt as though you were carrying an invisible weight, this could be the perfect moment to finally put it down. Whether those burdens are old expectations, outdated social rules, or pressures you've placed on yourself, life after 61 is less about holding on and more about understanding what's worth releasing. And in that release, you may just discover the freedom and peace you've been searching for all along. Stay with me until the very end, because by the time we reach number 12, you may begin to see this season of your life in a completely different light. Not as a decline, but as a gentle return to what truly matters. So, let's begin with the first one. What others think of you. One of the earliest and most liberating shifts that happens after 61 is realizing that worrying about what other people think of you no longer makes sense. In your younger years, it felt almost automatic, constantly wondering if you were being judged, measuring your choices against what others might say, or even holding yourself back out of fear of being misunderstood. But somewhere along the way, that weight starts to lift. You've lived enough, experienced enough, and weathered enough storms to know one undeniable truth. No one else walks in your shoes but you. With age comes a quiet freedom, a kind of inner permission to simply be who you are without apology, without trimming yourself down to fit expectations, and without feeling the need to dress everything up for approval. It's not that you suddenly stop caring altogether. It's that you come to see how little most people are truly paying attention. And even when they do notice, their opinions don't change the reality of your life or the value of your choices. Think about it. The friends who really matter aren't keeping score. They don't care if you repeat a story, if your laugh has gotten louder, or if you show up in the same comfortable shoes day after day. What they care about is your presence, your wisdom, and the way you make them feel when you're together. That is where the real connection lies, and that's something age teaches us with a clarity no other season of life can provide. And for those who do judge, most of the time it has little to do with you and everything to do with them. Their criticism is often just a reflection of their own insecurities, fears, or regrets. With age, you begin to understand this more clearly. It's not about becoming indifferent, it's about becoming grounded. You no longer waste your energy chasing the impossible dream of being liked by everyone. Instead, you begin showing up as yourself, fully, honestly, and unapologetically. Whether it's the way you choose to dress, the words you decide to speak, or the way you spend your precious time, you start to trust your own inner compass more than the fleeting reactions of a crowd. And that trust? It changes everything. It shows in how you carry yourself when you walk into a room, how calmly you handle disagreements, and even in the way you rest at night with a sense of peace. You come to realize that blending in or pleasing everyone is far less important than feeling at home in your own skin. Now, let's talk about the second shift that happens after 61. Chasing status or titles. Another illusion that begins to lose its grip is the belief that your worth is tied to titles, positions, or social recognition. Earlier in life, so much energy is poured into climbing ladders, collecting degrees, earning promotions, or seeking approval in the form of recognition. Job titles, professional achievements, and social standing all seem to carry invisible weight, pushing us to strive for more and more. But as time passes, something remarkable happens. You begin to see those labels for what they are: temporary. You meet people who have done extraordinary things, and you realize their greatness isn't in their titles or accolades. What makes them unforgettable is who they are when no one else is looking. The truth is, after a certain age, people stop asking, "What do you do?" and instead start noticing, "How do you make others feel? Are you kind? Are you steady? Do you make those around you feel seen and valued?" At 61 and beyond, success is quietly redefined. It's no longer measured by the plaques on the wall or the letters after your name. It's measured by the depth of your character, the strength of your relationships, and the peace you feel within yourself. It's no longer about being the best person in the room. What matters now is being the most present, the most compassionate, and the most authentic version of yourself. That constant push to be somebody gradually shifts into a quieter, more powerful desire to simply be yourself without the heavy armor of professional titles or social labels. And when that shift truly takes root, the pressure to compete, compare, or measure up against others starts to fade away. You begin to see that your identity was never meant to be tied to a resume, a paycheck, or the number of people who recognize your name. In fact, some of the happiest and most fulfilled people in their 70s and 80s are the ones who learned to release all that noise. They chose instead to focus on living well, nurturing what really matters, and cherishing the life they've built. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights meaningful, please comment number 2 below so I know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next videos. Your support helps us keep creating thoughtful, helpful content designed to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move into number 3. Keeping toxic relationships. One of the most liberating truths that reveals itself after 61 is this: you no longer have to keep people in your life just because they've always been there. The old belief that longevity automatically equals loyalty starts to unravel. Whether it's an old friend who constantly drains your energy, a family member who refuses to respect your boundaries, or someone whose presence brings more stress than peace, you begin to realize something crucial. Time is far too precious to be spent managing relationships that harm more than they help. In your earlier years, there may have been plenty of reasons to hold on to relationships that weren't truly serving you: fear of being alone, feelings of guilt, the pull of habit, or even a sense of obligation. But with age comes a deeper clarity. You begin to notice how your body reacts in the presence of certain people: the tightness in your shoulders, the forced laughter that doesn't quite reach your heart, or the way you feel the need to emotionally prepare yourself before spending time with them. And then, almost naturally, the question arises: why am I still doing this? Oski. Letting go of toxic relationships doesn't mean you've become unforgiving or cold-hearted. Quite the opposite. It means you've finally learned to put your well-being first. It means you've earned the right to choose peace over pretense, clarity over confusion, and joy over simply surviving. Many older adults describe this as a kind of emotional spring cleaning that seems to happen naturally with age. Instead of maintaining a wide circle full of shallow or stressful interactions, you begin to seek out a smaller group of meaningful, mutual connections, relationships that feel easy, warm, and real. You stop pretending, stop over-accommodating, and start honoring your own limits. And the beautiful part is this: once you release the people who weigh you down, you create space for those who truly uplift you, who see you clearly, and who accept you just as you are. These are the people who don't demand that you shrink, change, or hide parts of yourself just to make them comfortable. And after 61, that kind of freedom, the freedom to choose relationships that nourish you, becomes absolutely non-negotiable. Number 4 is closely tied to this lesson: overcommitting your time. By the time you reach your early 60s, one truth becomes crystal clear. Your time is your most sacred currency, and overcommitting, saying yes out of habit, guilt, or pressure, begins to feel like giving away pieces of your life that you will never get back. In your younger years, it might have felt almost necessary to show up everywhere, help everyone, and keep pace with an endless list of obligations. But after 61, that equation shifts dramatically. You begin to understand something profound. Your time is not only valuable, it is finite. There's a very real difference between being generous with your time and being completely drained by it. Many older adults come to realize that constantly cramming the calendar full doesn't mean you're living more fully. Often, it simply means you're avoiding stillness. Yet it's in those quieter, slower moments that the truth of life reveals itself. Long walks without rushing, meals enjoyed slowly and intentionally, conversations that linger and deepen rather than being cut short. Those are the moments that begin to matter most. And they're the ones you start protecting fiercely. Overcommitting, however, has a way of sneaking in through the back door. Maybe it's agreeing to take on a task when your body is clearly asking for rest. Maybe it's feeling guilty about saying no to a social event or pushing yourself to meet the expectations of others at the expense of your own peace. But with time, you begin to choose differently. You realize that saying no is not selfish, it is wise. It is an act of self-respect, a way of honoring the body and spirit that have carried you this far. And here's the remarkable part. When you begin honoring your limits, something shifts in your relationships as well. The people who truly matter don't take it personally. They don't guilt you. They don't question your priorities. Instead, they understand. They value that when you do show up, it's genuine. Your presence is wholehearted, offered from a place of abundance rather than obligation. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself after 61 is the freedom to be selective with your time. Not everything deserves a yes, and that's the beauty of this stage of life. You've earned the right to spend your time where it nourishes you most, to leave open spaces on your calendar, to pause before saying yes. This becomes an act of wisdom, because your time is not simply something you spend, it's the way you honor your one and only life. Number 5 is about another quiet shift that brings relief: fighting every wrinkle or gray hair. One of the most exhausting, yet often unspoken struggles is the battle to erase every visible sign of age from your body. After 61, many people begin to step back and ask themselves a simple question: why? The endless creams, the hair dyes, the costly procedures, the pressure to hold on to a youthful look, all of it comes from a culture that still hasn't caught up to the true beauty of aging with grace. But the truth is, you're not here to compete with the image of a 30-year-old. You've earned every line, every silver strand, every mark that carries the story of your life. This doesn't mean you stop caring about your appearance or the way you present yourself to the world. The key is understanding the difference between self-care and self-erasure, between honoring your body and waging war against it. At some point, you come to realize that aging is not a flaw that needs fixing. It's a natural process to be understood, respected, and even celebrated. There is a unique radiance that shines through someone who has made peace with the mirror, a glow that doesn't come from creams or dyes, but from acceptance, humor, and warmth. It's the confidence of no longer apologizing for growing older, but instead carrying yourself with pride. And when you let go of the exhausting idea that you have to hide your age, something remarkable happens. You become more magnetic, more authentic, more you. The irony is that people aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to presence. And when you stop trying to turn back the clock, you actually turn up the volume on everything that makes you beautifully, unmistakably yourself. So if you've spent years trying to look younger just to feel like you were enough, let this be your permission to finally stop. You are not less because your skin has softened or your hair has turned silver. In truth, you are more seasoned, more soulful, more complete, and none of that needs to be hidden or covered up. If you're still here watching and finding these insights meaningful, please comment number 5 below so I know you've stayed with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do it now and turn on the bell so you won't miss future videos. Your support allows us to continue creating thoughtful content that informs, inspires, and uplifts. Now, let's move forward to number 6, forcing yourself into uncomfortable trends. After 61, the idea of keeping up with every new trend, whether it's in fashion, technology, lifestyle, or even the way people talk, begins to feel, quite frankly, unnecessary, even a little ridiculous. In your younger years, there was often pressure to stay relevant, to prove that you were current and could keep up with the crowd. Maybe you bought the latest clothing styles, learned the newest gadgets, or tried to mimic whatever was popular in your circle. But with time comes wisdom. You begin to realize that comfort, ease, and authenticity carry far more weight than following what's fashionable for a season. You stop buying clothes that may look stunning on a mannequin, but feel restrictive, scratchy, or uncomfortable on your skin. You stop downloading apps you don't care about simply to appear in the know. You stop bending, twisting, and reshaping yourself to fit whatever mold society insists is acceptable this year. Instead, you begin to make choices based on what feels right, for your body, for your rhythm, for your life. Because here's the truth, trends will always be fleeting, disappearing as quickly as they arrive. But style, your personal way of carrying yourself, the way you live, the values you express, that's timeless, and it never goes out of season. Some of the most compelling people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond are those who know exactly what works for them. Not because it's the newest thing, but because it's true. True to who they are, true to what they've lived through, and true to what they actually value. Chasing after every new trend only leads to exhaustion, frustration, and a sense of disconnect. And once you let go of that pressure, you create room for something far more meaningful, alignment. You begin asking better questions. Not what's in right now, not me, but what really matters to me. Not will this impress someone, but does this feel authentic to who I am? That shift brings with it a quiet joy. You walk into a room and feel comfortable in your own skin. You choose clothes not for the eyes of others, but for the dignity and confidence they give you. You begin to live by your own rhythm, not by the ticking clock of trend cycles or the constant demand for external approval. And without even trying, you send out a quiet but powerful message to those around you. This is what it looks like to age with integrity, self-respect, and authenticity. Number 7. Holding grudges. After you've lived a few decades, something important happens. You begin to see just how much space bitterness can take up in your heart and mind. By the time you reach your 60s, carrying grudges no longer feels like strength. Instead, it feels like an anchor, heavy and unrelenting. You start to realize that the energy it takes to stay angry, to replay old arguments again and again, or to carry resentment year after year simply isn't worth the cost. Every ounce of energy spent on bitterness is energy stolen from joy, peace, and connection. And at this stage of life, you begin to see that peace is far more valuable than proving a point. In your younger days, holding on to a grudge may have felt necessary. You might have believed that clinging to that memory, that slight, that injustice was proof that you were wronged, that what happened mattered, that your feelings were valid. But with age comes a wider perspective, and part of that perspective is the realization that forgiveness is rarely about the other person. It's about freeing yourself, because when you hold a grudge, you're the one carrying the weight. You're the one who feels the heaviness every time you hear their name or replay the moment in your mind. And eventually, you start to ask yourself the honest question, is this really how I want to spend my days? It's not about pretending the hurt didn't happen or denying that it mattered. It's about choosing peace over poison, presence over pain. Letting go doesn't mean excusing the behavior, nor does it mean reconciliation is required. What it does mean is refusing to let what happened in the past steal one more moment of your present. And when you arrive at this stage of life, that choice becomes a powerful act, an act of prioritizing your inner calm over the need to keep score. Many older adults describe forgiveness as one of the greatest, most unexpected gifts they ever gave themselves. They say things like, "I didn't realize how heavy it was until I finally set it down." And you can see the difference in them. It shows in their face, in their health, and in the gentle softness of their presence. There is a visible lightness in those who have made peace, compared to those still fighting old battles. So if there's something you've been holding on to, an old resentment, a wound that still lingers, maybe now is the time to finally let it go. Not for them, but for you. Not because the other person deserves it, but because you do. Number 8 is about something many of us spend decades struggling with: apologizing for our boundaries. After 61, you begin to recognize that boundaries are not selfish. They are essential. And perhaps even more importantly, you discover that explaining, softening, or apologizing for them is no longer necessary. For much of life, especially if you were raised to be agreeable, helpful, or always nice, you may have felt the pressure to cushion your no, to justify why you needed rest, or to over-explain your decisions just to avoid disappointing others. But with time comes wisdom, and that wisdom shows you a simple truth. Constantly overextending yourself just to keep the peace slowly erodes your own sense of balance and well-being. The reality is that people who truly respect you don't need long explanations. They understand that a boundary isn't rejection, it's clarity. It's your way of saying, "This is how I care for myself so I can be fully present for what really matters." There is tremendous strength in being able to say, "No, I won't be able to," or "That doesn't work for me," without scrambling to pile on excuses or reasons. You learn to create space between your choices and other people's reactions, because you know deep down that your life is not a group project. It is yours. And something beautiful happens the moment you stop apologizing for your needs. People begin meeting you where you are, rather than where they expect you to be. You start modeling a kind of self-respect that sets the tone for healthier, more balanced relationships. You attract people who value mutual understanding instead of demanding constant access. Even in the simplest everyday moments, choosing not to answer a late-night call, turning down an invitation when your body needs rest, or protecting a block of quiet time during your day, you stand firm without guilt. And in doing so, you remind yourself and others that honoring your boundaries is not just an act of self-care, but an act of courage. Not because you've hardened, but because you've softened toward yourself. After 61, boundaries stop feeling like barriers and start becoming lifelines. They preserve your energy, protect your joy, and allow you to show up authentically in the moments that matter most. And when you stop apologizing for them, you finally give yourself the space to breathe deeply and live more freely. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 8 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you won't miss upcoming videos. Your support truly helps us continue creating meaningful content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move into number 9. Proving your productivity. For decades, many of us ran a silent race, the race to be seen as productive, to always be doing, to have something tangible to show for every single hour. But after 61, that race begins to look different. The urge to prove your worth through busyness starts to feel less like purpose and more like emptiness. You begin to understand a powerful truth. Being busy is not the same as being fulfilled. Checking off endless to-do lists or juggling a packed calendar doesn't automatically mean you're living well. In the earlier seasons of life, productivity often became intertwined with identity. Maybe you felt validated when your days were overbooked, when every task was completed, or when others praised your hustle and drive. But now, with the clarity that comes with age, you start to value something richer: space, stillness, unhurried time to think, to reflect, and simply to be without needing to justify it to anyone. It's in that stillness that meaning emerges. You come to see that your worth isn't tied to how many tasks you can accomplish in a day, but in how deeply you experience the moments you have left. What once felt like accomplishment may now feel like nothing more than noise. Instead of racing from one task to the next, you find yourself craving depth rather than pace, choosing to pour your attention into one meaningful activity instead of scattering your energy across a dozen rushed ones. Whether it's tending to a garden, writing a heartfelt letter by hand, or simply sitting on the porch watching the sun slip below the horizon, these slower rhythms are not signs of idleness. They are a return to what truly matters. And here's the truth. You've already proven yourself. Through decades of showing up, working hard, giving of yourself, and sacrificing for others, you've built a life that speaks for itself. You don't need to keep proving that your time has value. It is valuable. Always. Whether you're producing or resting, fixing something, or simply watching the world go by, your worth doesn't change. Letting go of that internal scoreboard opens the door to a deeper kind of presence. You begin to measure your days not by how much you accomplished, but by how alive you felt while living them. Not by what got checked off, but by what was felt, noticed, and shared. After 61, productivity becomes a tool, not a ruler. You use it when it serves you, and when it doesn't, you finally feel free to put it down. Number 10. Keeping silent about what matters. There comes a point, often after 61, when staying quiet no longer feels wise. Instead, it begins to feel like a waste. For much of life, you may have bitten your tongue to keep the peace, to avoid awkwardness, or simply because you thought it wasn't your place. But now you start to understand something profound. Your voice is one of the most powerful tools you have, and withholding it costs far more than it once did. Whether it's speaking up in a doctor's office about your health, having a difficult but necessary conversation with family, or simply looking someone in the eye and saying, "That's not okay," you realize that silence doesn't always protect you. Sometimes it steals the chance to stand firmly in your truth. Your willingness to speak the truth becomes less about confrontation and more about clarity. It's not that you suddenly enjoy conflict, it's that you've lived long enough to see what happens when important things are left unsaid. Misunderstandings grow in the silence. Resentments harden over time. Opportunities for connection quietly slip away. And with age comes the wisdom to recognize that sugarcoating rarely serves anyone. So, you start choosing honesty over forced harmony. Not harsh honesty, but kind honesty. Not careless words, but grounded truth. And you realize that speaking your mind doesn't make you difficult, it makes you real. It gives others the chance to see the full picture rather than assuming one on their own. And when you speak now, your words carry a different kind of weight. It's not because you're the loudest voice in the room. It's because your words are backed by decades of lived experience. People listen differently when they know you're not speaking for attention, but from intention. And the more you use your voice, the more permission others feel to use theirs, too. Whether it's advocating for yourself in a doctor's office, calling out something that isn't fair, or simply saying clearly what you need, you stop editing your truth just to make others more comfortable. Not out of bitterness, but out of understanding. Because by now you've realized something powerful. Your silence won't save anyone, but your honesty just might. Number 11. Comparing your life path to others. After 61, one of the most freeing realizations finally comes into focus. There is no single timeline for life. No official scoreboard. No universally approved checklist that tells you whether you've lived the right way. You begin to notice just how different everyone's journey really is, and how much unnecessary suffering comes from believing you should have done things the way someone else did. Maybe your neighbor retired earlier and seems carefree. Maybe an old friend remarried and found new love. Maybe someone else your age just finished traveling the world, or even started a brand new business. And in quiet moments, you may find yourself wondering, did I miss something along the way? But as you settle more deeply into yourself, you come to realize that this kind of comparison only steals joy from the life you actually have. Because your path was never supposed to look like theirs. It was never meant to. Every choice you've made, every detour you've taken, every late start, and every unexpected pause has shaped you in ways no one else could understand. The losses you've endured, the people you've cared for, the work you poured your heart into, it all mattered. Even if it didn't come with applause, shiny titles, or picture-perfect moments, it still carried weight and meaning. And with that understanding, you stop asking, "Am I where I'm supposed to be?" and start asking a much more powerful question. Am I being honest with myself now? That shift changes everything. It allows you to appreciate your own journey, not for how it looks on paper, but for how deeply it has transformed you. Comparison fades and contentment rises, not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because it finally feels like yours again. When you embrace the truth that your timeline belongs to you alone, everything begins to feel lighter. Regrets soften, pressures quiet down, and each day begins to feel like a chapter worth living fully, exactly as it is, not as a test against someone else's story, but as a quiet celebration of your own. Number 12. Pretending you're not tired. For decades, many of us carried a kind of performance, the constant pushing through, powering on, smiling through fatigue as though rest were a luxury we hadn't yet earned. But after 61, pretending you're not tired begins to feel like a game you no longer want or need to play. And truthfully, you shouldn't have to. By this stage of life, you've earned the right to rest without guilt. You've earned the freedom to sit down when your body asks you to say, "I'm going to take it slow today," and truly mean it. The old idea that your worth is tied to how long you can go without pausing simply doesn't hold up anymore. If anything, it starts to feel absurd. Because here's the truth. Fatigue isn't weakness, it's information. It's your body sending you a message that something needs care, attention, or renewal. Ignoring that message doesn't make you strong, it only makes recovery longer and more difficult. But when you begin to honor your energy, when you notice what drains you, what fills you, and what rhythms feel right, you start living in deeper alignment with yourself. This doesn't mean you stop moving, stop creating, or stop doing things that matter. What it does mean is that you stop pretending. You stop apologizing for needing a nap in the afternoon, for skipping a social gathering when you're depleted, or for simply saying, "I don't have it in me today." And instead of carrying shame, you begin to feel something far better. Relief. Relief that you're finally listening to your body, trusting its signals, and honoring its wisdom. Relief that you've stopped treating your body like a machine and started treating it as the lifelong companion it truly is. And the beauty is, the people around you benefit from that honesty as well. When you choose to slow down, you give others permission to do the same, to listen to their own needs, to rest when necessary, and to show up more fully when their energy is restored. After 61, you begin to see that pacing yourself is not falling behind. It's choosing sustainability over burnout, balance over depletion, and there is nothing lazy about that. On the contrary, it is wise, intentional, and exactly what the years ahead deserve. Final thoughts. As we wrap up this video, I invite you to take a quiet moment and reflect. Which of these insights resonated with you the most? Was there one idea that struck a chord? Something that felt especially true for where you are right now? Maybe you recognized a burden you've been carrying for far too long, one you're finally ready to set down. Or perhaps you noticed a shift you've already begun to feel deep within your bones, even if you hadn't yet found the words to name it. Each realization is a step toward a life that feels lighter, freer, and more your own. And that, more than anything, is the gift of growing older with clarity. The truth is, after 61, so much of what once felt urgent or overwhelmingly important begins to fade into the background. What remains, the peace, the clarity, the honesty, is what you've truly been moving toward all along. Letting go of the things that no longer make sense isn't about giving up. It's about coming home. Coming home to yourself, to what matters most, and to the kind of life that feels genuinely lived, not merely managed. So let me ask you this. Which one of these 12 things are you most ready to release? Or perhaps, which one have you already let go of? And how has that shift changed you? I'd love to hear your thoughts, because every story, every reflection, adds richness to this conversation we're having together. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd love for you to leave a comment below and share one takeaway that resonated with you most and how you plan to bring it into your daily life. Your insights and reflections are deeply valuable, not only to me, but to others who are on this same journey. Reading your comments gives us encouragement, inspiration, and the motivation to keep creating content that speaks to your needs. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who may benefit. Your support truly helps us continue producing meaningful content designed to inform, inspire, and uplift. Thanks again for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Wishing you good health, happiness, and peace always. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you never miss what's coming next.